All right, our next talk is titled A Journey from Page Builders to Blocks, presented by Joe Simpson Jr. In this interactive presentation, Joe will hike through a case study for a site rebuild, highlighting some considerations that occur when transitioning from classic editor themes or page builders to full site editing with blocks. Everyone give a warm welcome to Joe Simpson Jr.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, today I'm going to move around a little bit. My presentation is going to have a little bit of movement for those. I do a lot of advocacy in the accessibility world, so there may be a little bit of movement, so I hope we're good there. I was laid out flat on a cold, hard operating table, similar to the one that you see here, about 8 years ago in 11 days. And as I counted backwards, as they put the mask on, 100, 99, 98, 97, 96. All I could think about were these faces. How are we going to tell my daughter, Troy? After all, she was a senior in high school. She was getting her portfolio together. She was following in her dad's footsteps as a creative. And she was applying to art schools all over the country. But I didn't want to interrupt her senior year. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. I remember when my daughter would be on the table, our kitchen table, and she would jump into my arms, and I'll put her back, and I'll take a step further back. How would I tell her that tomorrow at about 10 o'clock, there's a possibility that I wouldn't return home again? When I came to, my cardiologist, he gave me this. On the left, it shows the blocked arteries. I had two 100% blocked arteries. And on the right is afterwards. I had a couple of stents put in, and I wasn't sure what was next. Would I be able to work again? Did I want to work again? Part of the stressors that caused my heart event were at the office. So I had a lot to think about. The next morning, an angel came to my bedside. Someone from the hospital cardiology unit gave me an option. She said, for the next 90 days, you can take a leave of absence, and we'll go through the process of healing you physically, mentally, and emotionally. There was class work, physical work, and from that point on, the next 90 days, I decided to take my first step. From my bed to the bathroom, there was a possibility I could pass out. That's how weak I was. I had to rebuild from zero. But as one step turned into 2, 3, 4, 16, 32, it became a lap around the park. It became 4 laps around the park until I found myself here. This is a trail to the highest point in Santa Clarita. I'm from Southern California, and in the Santa Clarita Valley, this is Central Park. And so I decided in the next 90 days, I wanted to climb this hill. So today's talk is all about journeys. And this was my journey. I wanted to decide how I was going to get to the top of the hill. And so I had to break it down into smaller chunks, smaller pathways. I wanted to get a third of the hill by a certain time, 2/3, and then to the very top. 3 days before I went back to work, this is the view that I saw at 5 o'clock in the morning from the top of Central Park. During those 90 days, I decided I really wanted to focus on things that meant a lot to me, things that I could do creatively. Again, I mentioned earlier, my daughter went into an artist field. I was a designer at one point. I wanted to get back into art. I picked up my pencil, my digital pencil. I wanted to get back into WordPress. WordPress is one of those things that I got a lot of joy out of, a lot of giving back. So in the next years to come, I wanted to do that. And that's what brought me before you today. But you may be wondering, what the heck does this have to do with page builders, WordPress? It's about your journey, trying to empower you to do more with WordPress. and giving back, as well as learning and growing. My name is Joe Simpson. As Caleb mentioned, I'm in the WordPress community. I'm here thanks to SiteGround as an ambassador, but it allows me to talk and advocate in the community. I'm part of the Make Accessibility team, and in the last 8 years, I've done just about anything and everything I could possibly do in WordPress. For over 3 decades, I worked for Metro Los Angeles, getting people out of their cars and onto public transit. Before that, I'd worked for Fortune 500 companies in their branding and corporate identity departments at Unisys, Chrysler Corporation, and all the logos that you see on the screen are part of my journey. All of those companies merged and had a major brand identity change when I worked there. So I got a lot of great experience through those companies. As I mentioned, in the 90 days, I did anything and everything that I could in WordPress. I decided to attend my first meetup. Although I had used WordPress for about 3 or 4 years, I attended my first WordPress meeting in downtown Los Angeles, and I saw Adam Silver. He was presenting that night, and he was talking about this event called WordCamp Los Angeles, and they were asking for volunteers. I hadn't done that before. I said, let me do that. In the next 90 days, I attended 21 or so meetups all over Southern California in the 5 county areas, thousands of miles in my car. I decided to start a meetup. I was tired of spilling coffee on myself at 10:30 at night, driving back home to Santa Clarita. In the upper left in that screen, that's from WordCamp Los Angeles. I attended 3 WordCamps, my first WordCamp US virtually. I did anything and everything in WordPress, volunteering, meetups, WordCamps, and I wanted to do more. What you see on screen here is what I've been doing lately. I've contributed to the Make team. I've started 3 meetups. I've done anything and everything, but I wanted to advocate in emerging and underrepresented communities all around the world, as well as in the States. So I've been doing that for the past 8 years. I've worked on the WordCamp US organizing team. Again, I've done anything and everything I can in WordPress. Today's talk is a journey from page builders to blocks in WordPress. It's about my personal case study at Metro Los Angeles, going from themes to where we are now, and my journey from here forward. Don't look at that. Unfortunately, I had a personal emergency, and I couldn't get my slides together in a format that you could follow along with, but I'll get those up by the end of this weekend. This is my WordPress origin story. What you see on the screen was our first WordPress blog at Metro Los Angeles. We have a lot of negative information or negative news stories about public transportation. We had a sinkhole, we were on 60 Minutes, and our agency decided, hey, let's get out in front of this and provide as much agency information to the news and public communities as possible. And this, what you see on the screen, was what I inherited. Our lead developer and CSS goddess both left our agency within 1 month of each other, and they said, here, Joe, take this. I was a graphic designer turned HTML person using the Adobe Suite, Dreamweaver, all that stuff, and I had to learn WordPress. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately for me, we had budget. We're a government agency, and that year, we had budget to send me to training. Fortunately, it was to the WordPress VIP Intensive Developer Training Seminar, and I attended, but there was an issue. The very first day, they said, spin up a virtual box. So for someone that had come from graphic design, had very little development skills, my head went, wow. But something amazing happened. To my left, to my right, behind me, in front of me, everyone turned to help me. They helped me spin up a box. That was what WordPress community was about. And so as I decided what I was doing next, I thought about that. I want to help others. What I know, I want to share. These are some of the problems that we had with the site that I inherited. It was self-hosted, and I hope he's not looking at this, but I call him Evil Doug. He was not into using WordPress. He was an artist, filmmaker, turned developer, and he wanted to use anything and everything open source, but as obscure as possible. And for some reason, he didn't like WordPress. So he built our self-hosted instance. The other iceberg in the room was that our agency was a Microsoft shop. So our ITS group hated the idea of anything that required customization outside of the Microsoft network. The site that you saw was built with Headway, which was a premium theme, a license that you would have to worry about renewing, so there was a cost. If you know about me and the community that we have back in Santa Clarita, we're big about starting with free, and if you need something premium, working your way to that, so that was a bad feature for us as well. That theme put an admin on top of WordPress, so there was two things I had to learn. The other thing, I don't want to rip on Evil Doug again, but he hard-coded everything. So every time there was an update, it wiped out everything. So the first thing I had to do, and this is what I built, we decided, we had a little budget, we moved our self-hosted instance to WordPress VIP. WordPress VIP is an enterprise-level hosting platform for Time Magazine, CBS, local news, a lot of big agencies, so it allowed me to learn WordPress the right way. It was automatic service. These were some of the benefits. Again, it was enterprise level. We were we're the third largest transportation agency in the country. We wanted something that could handle the type of traffic that we did, but also some of the things that an enterprise company may deal with. It had a large selection of themes. I'm a very big advocate for the repository, not really going out into doing something a little more unique. It also allowed us a multi-site instance. So that meant we could share a theme between both the source, and we had a Spanish language site called El Pasajero, which was in Spanish language version of the source. So we were able to share the theme. It was one theme, we shared it across, we could brand it. At Metro Los Angeles, we have a very distinct and award-winning brand, so we had to stay in line with what they were doing visually, so it allowed for me to build that. And I built my first child theme, and it had support, one thing that it wouldn't have with Evil Doug. Now for the drama. As a government agency, there was quite a bit of turnover. Metro Los Angeles is run by a board of directors, which is appointed by City Hall. The mayor is often on our board of directors. And depending on what project is being built in Los Angeles, that person is in charge of Metro. So currently, 2 weeks ago, we just opened the airport connector. For those of you who get to the airport by public transportation, the inside joke in Los Angeles was that we had transportation everywhere except for 2 miles from the airport. So we just recently opened Airport Connector, so the mayor of Inglewood was head of our board. So needless to say, there was lots of management change, and so directions often changed. And I can't tell you, I think we started and stopped on a redesign of the source maybe 5 times. Unfortunately, it kept crashing. Unfortunately, as that time passed, the theme became deprecated. So in 2018, I was able to attend WordCamp US for the first time. I was sitting outside the hall where Matt was going to do his State of the Word, and I just happened to be sitting next to someone. So as you look around today, for those that may be new to WordPress, you may be sitting next to someone that's created something amazing in WordPress. So I would suggest during the day, just say hello to someone next to you, and you may find out something interesting. So that day, I was sitting next to Ben Rittner. He told me about this company he was starting called Cadence, and that they were going to be one of the first companies to have block themes. And it was going to change the course of WordPress forever. During Matt's State of the Word, he talked about Gutenberg, and as we know, WordPress changed forever. I also saw in the back of the conference, the sponsor area, Elementor was there. Page builders came on scene online at the same time. So from that point, we had decided in 2018 we were going to go with using page builders for some of our work. And these are some of the sites that we spin up. The cool thing about Metro is that we were opening, well, let me give you a little history. Metro in Los Angeles, they decided to rip up all the transit that existed in LA and put freeways everywhere. Now we're going taking out those freeways and putting transit back in. So every time a new line opens, we spin up a landing page that points to what we've done project-wise and then eventually operational. So once they go online, you need to know how to get from here to there. So part of my job was spinning up these boutique sites. So for instance, it's kind of tiny, but the LA 2028 is going to be coming up. So our information, we spun up a page about that. Expo line, K line, everything you see there, we spun up information. So I got a lot of experience with page builders. We started with Beaver Builder, then on to Elementor. Here's a little history of the source. The source, when they started, they said, hey, we want to do 5 to 7 stories a day. Then it became 5 to 7 stories a week. But we wanted to get as much information out about what we were doing as possible, covered our board. It was we brought in a Pulitzer Prize author to be the head editor. And since 2019, or 2009, we had over 12,000 posts, almost 20 evergreen pages. We've received over 50,000 comments. We have over 2,000 email subscribers, over 21,000 pieces of media, and we have over 100 editors at this point. So it's very active. So throughout the agency, if someone was working on the Sepulveda bus line, they wrote articles for the source. So we had lots of guest authors, and we need something robust enough to support our editor base, but also allow the editor to have a very consistent message that went out to our communities. When I mentioned that our theme deprecated, these were some of the objectives that we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to reduce site clutter. As I mentioned, we have so many posts online, but the one bad thing, and we all know that when we have editors, our editors tended to add tags and categories, and we had, I think we had over 10,000 categories and tags, which convoluted the search process. You couldn't find anything, and at that time, we didn't have a robust search. We had the standard search on WordPress. Don't throw any tomatoes at me, but it didn't suit our needs. We wanted to be able to feature content. So for example, when COVID happened, everything shut down. How would people get from work here to there using public transit? So our site took a dramatic change. So we wanted to be able to spin up something unique if there was a strike, for instance. So we wanted that capability. But we also wanted to empower our editors to be able to curate the content and really focus on content. Unfortunately, with the source, it was so old, and again, don't laugh, there was a plugin to add YouTube. That's how old it was. So we wanted to update to be in line with core, plugins, and themes so that we could eliminate some of those conflicts. We also wanted to eliminate some potential security risk. In the previous year, and we all may have this in our work environments, something will come down from the CEO that you have to act on immediately. The city of LA had a hack of their WordPress site, and so they're like, we need more security. So whatever we were going to build next had to suit our people upstairs, as well as just come in line with what was going on currently. We also wanted to train our editorial staff on a totally new system. We were one of the few people, and I don't know if it's few people, that were still using the classic editor plugin. So we wanted to update that as well. These were some of the tools that we looked at. I had experience with traditional themes and page builders, like I mentioned, but we wanted to get on board with Gutenberg. From the time when the project started to now, Gutenberg had gone through a couple of phases. Right there it says phase 1, but we were up to phase 3 by the time we were ready to design and build. We looked at, again, WordPress, Cadence, Generate Blocks, Divi, Beaver Builder, and Elementor. These are some of the pros and cons, and I apologize for the small type, but with Divi, it was too colorful. It was like a pastel Microsoft for me. It had like buttons and widgets everywhere. And again, if I offend anyone, I'm sorry. I'm just giving you my candid opinion. It was a premium theme. That was a strike. Because again, in a government agency, budgets fluctuate drastically. We wanted something that we can maintain, hopefully free, and hopefully something that's easy enough for someone that has no technical ability to use. Our editors weren't tech folks, so it had to be very simple. Again, it was a premium plugin. They didn't really have a local media network that we could access. It was non-GPL compliant, but it did have the drag and drop live editing interface. We started with Beaver Builder. One thing that caught our eye with Beaver Builder from a design standpoint, it had the Bootstrap background. And we were into using Bootstrap to accomplish our brand objectives. Again, but it was a premium tool, and it had some of the same issues as Divi. We settled on Elementor. I really loved how clean the interface was. It really reminded me of the Adobe interface. It allowed us to do a lot of drag and drop, but unfortunately, as a government agency, from an accessibility standpoint, page builders are sort of a no-no. We also looked at block page builders. Gutenberg, full site editing. When we first started looking, Gutenberg hadn't matured enough. I wasn't really ready to jump on board, so that was a strike against it, but it had come a long ways. The one great thing is that it's an automatic product. There was lots of literature, videos, learning materials out there about it, so we can get up to speed. And then it offered a few things that we'll talk about later that were beneficial to Metro moving forward. We looked at Generate Press. It was more of a developer tool, I felt. I mean, and again, nothing against developers. I love developers except for Evil Doug. But Generate Press was great in terms of accessibility. It was on the cutting edge in terms of blocks, but I felt like you really had to have a developer slant to use it, so our editors may have some issues if they needed to make some simple tweaks to the system. Cadence was great, again, but it was a premium tool. So again, we went through all of these and we decided on something out of left field. There is a theme called Newspack. One of my colleagues suggested it to me, and again, I would have never really found it in the repository. I saw this quote from someone at WooCommerce, and I was like, hey, let me investigate a little further. Newspack is a theme that was created by Automatic with Google News, as well as a couple of other foundations, to go after a certain audience. As we know, traditional media is sort of going away, and they wanted to provide a tool for news agencies to get online and have a really set of plugins, features, and it was block-based that they could use to get their information onto the media, onto online, as well as in new areas that they could monetize, as well as grow their news network. One thing that was great about it was that it had a number of different design styles right out of the box. So visually, it had a magazine layout, and we had a few areas that we could sort of customize and start with. So visually, it had a number of different variations that were great. In addition, it had a number of different block variations that we could start our pages with. So out of the box, a lot of things that were pre-built, a lot of things that were specific to the publishing industry were in block forms that they had already created. So for our team that had limited access or limited experience in blocks, we could leverage that to build our site. Again, Nosferatu music. There's a problem. Newspack was a WordPress.com feature, and it was $795 a month. I was talking to Adam earlier, and we were talking about when it's a small client's money, $795 can be a lot. At enterprise level, maybe not a big deal. Before a government agency, it was a big deal. Fortunately for us, I was looking at WP Tavern, and this article popped. It was talking about a plugin that was built that will allow you to go to the GitHub repository automatically and check for updates. that would allow us to use that theme in a self-hosted environment. Check. So we're ready to move forward. As I mentioned, Newspack is on automatic on GitHub. And again, as information changes, this is good also for our developers. If they need to go in and do some customization, they will have a reference and a backlog of what's been going on with Newspack to use. And this is what we have today. Last summer, the source re-debuted in a magazine format in line with our brand, but also it highlighted each of the different areas that were important to our agency. We sort of stepped back and said, hey, these are going to be our tags. These are going to be our categories. Stay within that. If you just basically do a few tags, it self-populates. It creates all the archive pages where someone that only wants to know about Expo, they can click on that link and jump there. We also made a more robust footer where our main editor can go in and say, hey, in June, Airport Connector's going up. We'll customize and curate the footer links to point there as well. So we had a number of different ways to keep funneling traffic to specific information and keeping the site fresh. Because again, in Metro, we're rushing in the next 30 years to rebuild what we tore up a while back. So new projects are coming online all the time. So again, we wanted to make sure our stakeholders and our writers knew what was going on. We also had an area at the top that allowed for a feature element to be populated. So as something popped up, as long as they tagged it right, it would take over the home page. We also improved the search. We use Jetpack Search. Again, I'm big into keeping things simple, but functional. We use WordPress Jetpack Search to curate based on our tags, and it improved search tremendously. So if someone went in and put in Airport Connector, it would populate and allow you to drill down. It also provided a more attractive feature layout. So for instance, like a magazine style, you open up your magazine feed section on a news site. On the weekend, you see a nice, beautiful, full width image, as well as a dramatic headline. It also gives you more information about the writer. One nice feature that they were requesting, sometimes articles are written by more than one person. So now we can add multiple editors. We put the social information right at the top. We had a nice dramatic title as well as a breadcrumb. To really, a lot of the features that we built in were for our users, our readers. We wanted to incorporate a lot of that stuff that had been missing for the past 15 years on the site. We also had estimated reading time, which is something that's a little newer in the WordPress community or in websites in general. Sometimes, for instance, one of the articles on the launch of the Airport Connector was like 12 minutes long. I can't really tell editors how to write for the web, but it's a good thing to let the readers know what they're getting into. So we added a lot of those kind of niceties to try to improve the reader experience. This is another feature. Metro is very diverse. As we know from looking at the news lately, there's been a lot going on in Los Angeles, but we have a core number of languages that we always put our information out in. So one of the things that we were tasked with was making sure that we had the ability to translate or provide translations in those 12 languages. So in our main menu, translate feature was added, as well as on each page, I created a few basic custom blocks. One was a translate block. So if they wanted to add additional importance to an article, they could just hit /translate and then drop it in as they were editing to add even more features as you read down the articles. A nice feature, again, I mentioned this is a layout with a full width image. We also had a 2-layer menu, which some of the information pointed back to our mothership site, as well as we had a store, more areas to get in contact with Metro as well. But one of the key features, one of the coolest things about the change was that it offered our editors a little more power. Before, like I mentioned, to do just about anything, embedded PDF, video, media, back in the days, we had plugins for that. Now, it was a distraction-free editing environment, and everything was in line. So if they needed to drop in a video, with blocks. Gutenberg, that was way easier. Also, the ability to move things around as they wrote. The outline feature in full-site editing is pretty amazing. It also provided the tags on the right, an area for the feature image, and a lot of features that just by making a few selections, it changed how the page presented itself. The other key feature, which we all have a boss, and sometimes they'll say, hey, we need numbers. These numbers are important for us because they have board reports where they get funding. So we also always get these frantic requests to grab numbers for something specifically. Now, instead of them asking the web team to pull them up, they can go in and do it themselves. All right. Today is about those journeys. Again, I had a number of different journeys, pre and post WordPress, and today was about trying to inspire you to do more or revisit. When I thought about this topic, the picture of my son that you saw, he was about 8 years old. Imagine not seeing my son for 8 years, how much I missed in his life. A lot of folks in our community, we decided 8 years ago, Gutenberg, full-site editing, nah. Gutenberg has changed a lot. And by me presenting what I showed you today, it was my jumping back into the water and learning. And I hope that it'll inspire you to do the same. But more importantly, contribute. Our community is about helping one another. I told you about the example where someone helped me spin up my first virtual box. So I've just made it a point to really try to help as much as possible. And I encourage you to do the same. Join Make. I was a team rep for the accessibility team for about 3 years, and it allowed me to learn from the best folks in accessibility. In our community in Santa Clarita, one of the things I'm really proud of, we were the first WordCamp that had a dedicated track to accessibility. We had over 25 speakers, whereas most camps may have 1 or 2 speeches. We're proud about that. The things that we believe in, we try to put our money where our mouths are. Learn. As I mentioned, this was my first crack at full-site editing. I encourage you to revisit it and learn more. I've done a lot of looking at learn videos on YouTube. Our meetup, we really tried to learn and do these things and share with each other as we grow. One of our community members is here. I haven't seen her since she left Southern California, but we're all about learning and sharing with each other, and I encourage you to do the same. Since the case study, we've done more in our community in Santa Clarita, and I would invite you to come and visit and learn with us. We've done AI in WordPress, Figma in WordPress. We're going through a current track where we're taking random sites and building them in full-site editing and getting feedback back and forth. So I encourage you to visit us. We're also going to be one of the local WordCamps, hopefully in 2025, definitely spring 2026. So I encourage you to come back to Santa Clarita. Nice weather, amusement park, golf courses, hiking, just about anything in Southern California. So come and join our community. I'll make these slides available, so don't take a picture. I'll share it on my social channels. You can find me here, Joe Simpson Jr., at any of the icons there, Slack, LinkedIn, Gmail. Thanks to the organizers, volunteers, and folks that are making this possible. Thanks for listening. And I'll open it up to questions if we have any.
Hi, very inspirational story. Thank you for sharing all that. My question is on when you were choosing Elementor. So you said you were going back and forth between Elementor and Cadence. I guess my question is, did you ever have to go from Elementor to the block editor? Did you ever have to migrate away? Did you put stuff in Elementor, have to take it out of Elementor and migrate it into a block theme?
Well, we did not, because as we know, it's not seamless.
I
What
know that's what that's what I wanted to know. Yeah.
Yeah, we and I keep calling out Evil Doug's name, but we went from the self-hosted, and just to give you a little bit of history, we had before we went to WordPress, we were way back as a Microsoft shop. We were Stellent, Oracle, and then we went to a custom CS that Evil Doug built, and then we went to WordPress. But one of the stipulations was if we were planning to move out of this technology into full site editing, that was going to be an issue. So that dictated what we decided on first. So for the source, it went from traditional to full site editing.
So you never really went to Elementor, you just considered it.
Well, no, I mentioned we have a number of project pages, and those are outside of. So just to give you an idea, we had the mothership site, which was a page builder. We had our landing pages for specific project openings. That was Elementor as well. And then our news blog was full site editing. So we had 3 buckets we were dealing with. Because again, I'm not asking you to just totally throw out what you're doing, but I'm asking you to consider it and adding it to your workflow.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right. Oh, back over here. And I just wanted, while we're waiting for the question, to give Adam Silver a shout out. Now, you may not know, as I mentioned, everyone along the way encouraged me. When I attended those 21 meetups in 90 days, everyone that I talked to that was a leader, they're like, how can I do more? They were encouraging me to speak, to volunteer, to do different things, instead of saying, hey, go figure it out yourself. So you may not know. You were one of the people that were responsible. So thanks, Adam. And listen to his podcast. That's how I knew he was going to be here. Yes.
Okay, so my question is about the 10,000 taxonomy terms, categories, and tags.
Mm-hmm.
Did you clean them up and like refactor them in any way, or did you just abandon those when you moved to the system? And if you did clean them up, what process did you use to go through those and figure out which ones to keep and how to recategorize things?
Great question. I went through, exported all the tags, put them in a CSV file, and we went through with the editorial team and struck through the ones that we wanted to get rid of. But I also suggested that, again, we're a government agency, so a project, when it goes from concept to production, has a lot of different names. So I wanted to come up with a naming convention. So what's the final name of the project? That's going to be the tag. And so we went through that whole process as well. So it went in a couple of different channels. We went from the big bulk list of all tags and categories, cut that one down, compared it against the new names, and came up with a new system. Any other questions? All right. So if that's it, thanks for joining me today. Hopefully I could talk to you more. Come and see me, and have a great day at WordCamp Montclair.